professor and I can do this without the mic, but good morning. My name is McClure Napoleon. I'm a professor of anthropology, and I'm the director of the McClure Archives and University Museum here at UCM. For those of you who don't know where that is, and I'm looking at some of you, that is on the first floor of the library. So I highly recommend that you come by at some point soon. I'm here today to welcome you to the keynote address for Politics and Social Justice Week here at UCM. So first of all, I want to talk about the sponsors of this talk. So most of Jeanne's arrival on campus is sponsored by the museum. Also, Politics and Social Justice Week, my college, which is Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, a speaker series grant from the Center for Teaching and Learning. And also, I'm going to give a shout out to my anthro students, because some of them are here. We had 30 anthropology students assisting in the management of the 70273 quilts this week. So shout out to them. They all volunteered and did that. They were I do want to mention that right after Jeanne is done talking, we are going to have a reception for her. It's down the hall in 237A. So for those of you not familiar with the building, just out the doors this way, and it's sort of on the corner down the hall a little bit. So that if you want to sit and visit with Jeanne or talk to her about her work, we'll be there from 12:30 to 1:45, and then we'll be heading over to the museum. So we've completed yesterday and opened officially this morning the 70273 Project exhibition at the McClure. It is to date the largest exhibition of these quilts all in one place. We have quilts and blocks over there from 16 different countries and hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals who've worked very hard to tell the story of people with disabilities who were killed during the Nazi Holocaust. And even if you don't know that background, the exhibition is not only stunning, it's staggering too. So the museum will reopen at 1 o'clock today while Jeanne is still in her reception. And then we are lucky enough at UCM to be able to exhibit these quilts all summer and into August. So we'll have quite a bit of time for everybody, as many as possible, to come see this amazing project that we are so lucky to host. Okay. Oh, the last thing I want to say is that I gave you all a little backstage pass ticket. If you didn't get one, there's a stack of them on top of the trash can by the door. On that ticket, there's a little QR code. For those of you who know what that means, you know what that means. If you don't know what that means, there are plenty of individuals in here who can show you. Jeanne kindly wrote a handbook about the 70273 project for us that includes a bibliography of books that she recommends, frequently asked questions about the project, information about how to get in touch with her, background, and that booklet, that 6-page booklet, is posted online. So you can scan that QR code, go directly to the book online, and then download it, read it, copy it, print it, whatever you might need to do, okay? So, without further ado, I am going to read the bio that Jeanne sent me, with the caveat that Jeanne and I are both quilters and Southern ladies, and so our conversation has not been this today. So here we go. Jeanne Hill Chambers usually picks up her pen and hands her big, fat, crazy ideas off to fictional women to bring to fruition. On February 14, 2016, however, she rolled up her own sleeves and put her degrees to work, an undergraduate degree in education and a master's degree in transformative language arts, giving life to the 70273 Project, a 501c3 organization, and what a life-changing decision that has proved to be. Before founding the 70273 Project, Jeanne was most proud of the fact that she had never had to attend a PTO meeting under an assumed name. Today, I suspect she has something else to be proud of. So, ladies and gentlemen, everybody who's here, please help me welcome Jeanne Hill Chambers, the creator of the 70273.
What do you do when a big, fat, crazy idea whooshes in out of seemingly nowhere, lands on your shoulder, and says, psst, listen up, Shug, because this is how you're going to spend the next several years of your life and all your children's inheritance? Well, if your name is Jeanne Hill Chambers, you launch that project 2 weeks later before you have time to think yourself out of it. So there we were sitting on the sofa watching documentaries about World War II, which is what we do when our daughter Allison comes to visit. Because Allison, wave your hand, Shug, that's Allison. She's my eyes and hands and ears and always my heart. She's my eyes and hands today and always my heart. So she travels around the country as Betty Grable, entertaining World War II veterans. And now that their numbers are waning, she talks to the families about that era and what she's learned from collecting the stories from the veterans. And y'all should see the veterans' faces when she walks by. They are whisked back in time to when they were that young, invincible buck. Just, looking at that Betty Grable painted on the nose of an airplane or maybe on a poster in the locker or something, and their mouth, they do that a lot. And then Allison will go over and she'll say, after she talks to them and thanks them for their service and listens to a little bit of their stories, asks them where they served and everything, she'll say, would it be all right if I give you a kiss? Would you like a kiss? And they go, so she goes for their cheeks in that blue, red 1940s lipstick, such a delicious color. She goes for their cheeks, and 98 out of 99 turn at the last minute and get kissed on the lips. And then she gets emails from their family saying, he hadn't shaved or bathed since that day. I can't get him to wash his face. And the people in church are complaining. So that's, and she's finishing up her degree in history, and this is the era that she likes the most, the World War II era, the 1940s. She loves everything about it. So she put on a World War II documentary because that's what we do in our togetherness. Now, I was sitting there. I'm not one who can just sit there and watch TV. I see a lot of heads. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So I was stitching, like I always do, the drawings of my sister-in-law, Nancy. Nancy, when she was 3 years old, there's Nancy, yeah. When she was 3 years old, teenagers from the neighborhood hung her from a swing set with a rope by the neck from the swing set. She lived, they were playing Cowboys and Indians, and whichever one they were playing needed the other part of the story to tell it, so Nancy was one. And so she lived, her mother found her in time, she lived, but her brain was permanently altered. And so when she was 53 years old, as words began to decline, she never had a big vocabulary anyway. Now she's down to about 12 words, and 6 of them are the word love. So she started drawing. I put a crayon in her hand, and it changed our lives. She started drawing as words evaporated, and that very night I started stitching her drawings. Called my husband, I call him the engineer, with good reason. So I called him and I said, because I was down there with Nancy by myself, and I said, there are 2 things you need to know. And he said, what's that? And I said, number 1 is Nancy's never going to ride in anything but a convertible again, as long as I'm breathing. And he said, do you know how much it costs to rent convertibles? And I said, I didn't hear a question. I didn't ask a question. If you heard an upward inflection at the end of that sentence, it's your imagination, because that was not a question. That was a statement of fact. And he said, okay, let's move on. What's the second thing? And I said, second thing is I need to go back to the fabric store. And he said, I thought, and I said, no. And he said, okay, well, why? And I said, that's an acceptable question. Because Nancy started drawing this afternoon, and I'm going to stitch every one of her drawings. And he said, what are you going to do with them? Well, with that, I bammed the phone down a few times and said, we've had this conversation before in our 30-something years of togetherness, and you know that an engineer does not ever ask an artist, what are you going to do with it when you're finished? That part comes when it comes. You're the engineer, you need a blueprint, I'm the artist, I don't, I just go. So, we've done that. She's never ridden in anything but a convertible with us again. The sensory experience still must be phenomenal because her smile wraps around her face about 13 times. And this one is called In Our Own Language 3. Now I was stitching on In Our Own Language 4 when this whole big fat crazy idea came to visit. But this gives you an idea of what her drawings are like because I hadn't finished putting the other one together. This one is, in this photo, is hanging in an exhibit in the Ross Art Museum in the campus of Ohio Wesleyan. And this is In Our Own Language 3. Every time she finishes a set of drawings, I go down to visit, I bring them home, leave her 10 more reams of paper and a new box of 64 crayons. And I come home and I stitch every drawing in that set. And then it goes into this series called In Our Own Language. This is In Our Own Language 3. And that gives you some idea of the size. I know I'm short, but the engineer's a little bit taller. So that just gives you an idea of the size. So that's kind of the cast of characters. We've got Allison, sort of the instigator. We've got Nancy. We've got the engineer. And so we're sitting there watching this documentary. And I'm stitching, and my attention floats back to the documentary just about the time they spend 3 sentences on something called Action T4. Now this seems an appropriate time to take a little sidestep and tell you that this math is only fluent in English and Southern. So if I say Action T4, just know that I understand that's not the way the Germans would say it, but that's the best I can do. So we're going with Action T4. The T4 stands for the address, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So if my attention zooms back, they spend about 3 sentences on something called Action T4, and that's when the big fat crazy idea whooshed in, sat on my shoulder and whispered, you know, pay attention, because here's what you need to do. It was amazing, y'all. It really showed me the quilts. Now I didn't know what all that stood for at that point. So I quickly went to the computer, and that's when I figured out what all this stands for. So I said to my husband, the engineer, hit the scepter. That's the remote control. And so he stopped it, and I said, do y'all know what I'm gonna do? And both Allison and the engineer did that eye roll. You know, they exercised their eyeballs. And they said, what? And I saw one of them look at their watch. And I said, it's October. 70,273 people with disabilities were murdered by this organization, and I am going to commemorate every one of them with a quilt block. And the engineer whipped that head around a little more in line with my face and said, I don't think you understand how big that is. And I whipped my head around him and said, oh, I do, Shug, I really do. It's just that your big starts with a lowercase b, and my big starts with a capital letter B. And he's still trying to figure that out, bless his heart. So, Action T4 was a Nazi organization started officially in the fall of 1939. It was a long time coming. There are things that happened before 1939, but in 1939 they really revved up and decided we're going to do this thing. In their quest, as we all know, to have the perfect country filled with the perfect people. And so they targeted the people with disabilities because they were obviously imperfect. It was, for the most part, a Nazi physician-run organization, and they created questionnaires that they sent out to institutions, to local physicians, to families, to schools, right at the end of 1939. We're talking like October, November. So the people who received the questionnaires, this is speculation on my part, might have thought that they were keeping this person out of the war with whatever they put on the questionnaires, when the agenda behind the questionnaire was something entirely different. Now, we were over in Germany last summer, and we had a long train ride, and we sat with a man who is from Germany and steeped in German history. And when I told him that, kind of in an effort to be nice, but I also wanted to know what he thought about it, he stopped me very quickly and said, oh no, they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly what they were doing. So they created this questionnaire, they sent it out, and then they had a propaganda campaign with posters like this one that says, this is how much it cost us to feed this person, and that money is coming out of your pocket when you could be spending it feeding your perfect children. Why would you want to do that? So they revved up Action T4. They created 6 what they called receiving centers, because in propaganda, words are important. Words are important anyway, but these need to be pretty words. They couldn't very well say killing centers, right? So they created 6 receiving centers in Germany and Austria, and they created the Charitable Transportation Bus Company. Just let that name sink in for a minute. SS officers, you see the 2 in the white lab jackets? Those are SS officers. They just donned the white jackets over their uniforms and rode the bus with the people. The questionnaires would come back to the committee, T4. That was the address of headquarters in Berlin, T4. So they would come back, assessing physicians would read over the questionnaires, and when 2 out of 3 assessing physicians put a red X at the bottom of the form, the person was murdered. The bus was sent for the person. It usually happened in a very short time span. So they blacked out all the windows on the buses, and SS officers rode just to make sure that nobody tried to escape or anything. This is one of the receiving centers. I'm going to call it Grafeneck. And that's how many were murdered there during this 20-month time period, from January 1940 to August 1941. There's another one. They're beautiful buildings, right? They look so serene, but what happened inside tells a totally different story. And then there's the breakdown per receiving center and how many people were murdered in this 20-month period. The idea came to Hitler when an SS officer and his wife petitioned for permission to murder their son, who was born with mental and physical deformities and disabilities. And the light bulb kind of went off in Hitler's brain, and he dispatched Karl Brandt over to check this out. And Karl came back and said, yes, the kid really does have some issues. And Hitler said, okay. And so they hatched this idea of Action T4. They had to be very careful about their wording, not only to prevent an uprising should that happen, although they certainly could have squelched it, I assume, but because Goebbels, is that how you pronounce his name?
Goebbels.
Huh?
Goebbels.
Goebbels, like, okay, Goebbels. Okay, thank you. So he was the minister, the Reich minister of propaganda, and he had a bad leg. And so they were very, very careful, because they didn't want to offend him. Hitler was also very careful in protecting his SS officers and the people who worked for Action T4. He did not want them to get into any trouble. Now, in August 1941, a bishop whose name I won't even attempt knew about this, Action T4, and he preached a sermon that was a rebellion in and of itself. And with that, people came out and they took a stand, and so the program was publicly closed in August 1941. So what we're commemorating is the 72,273 people that were killed in that 20-month time period. We've already exceeded our goal in less than 3 years, mind you. It's amazing. People are so awesome. This is Jeanne, because it's because of the kindness and the goodness of people in the world. And I work with people in 142 countries. Kindness and compassion is spoken the same way. Doesn't matter what it sounds like falling out of your mouth. It's spoken the same way. And so in less than 3 years, we were able to do that. We far exceeded it, and we now know, thanks to researchers doing their job, that there were probably more than 300,000 people with disabilities murdered. Maybe not under this program, but in total. I have a matchbox of a studio. We're just kind of have to cut off before 300,000. But anyway, here it is. So this is the basis of it. This is what I actually saw the quilts hung. When the idea came in, it actually showed me the quilts on an exhibit, and they were all hanging. So I had to research why the white background, why the 2 red X's. And you now know the white background represents the paper of the questionnaires, which is a really cold way to kill people. They never met the person they were evaluating. They didn't talk to families or local physicians or teachers. They just read the words on a page and made their life or death decision. And as I said, once 2 of them put a red X at the bottom of the form, the person was murdered. So every time you see a pair of red X's, one person has been commemorated. So that's the history part of the story. Now, 2 weeks later, on February the 14th, that was right at the beginning of February, on February the 14th, I wrote a blog post, and we were off. We were official. We were on our way. And this is quilt 1, the very first quilt. It has blocks from France, Australia, United States, all over the States. I think that's it in quilt 1. It's mostly States, France, and Australia. And so that one we finished at the end of 2016. We had enough blocks to do more quilts, but I wanted them shuffled. I didn't want one person to be in just one quilt. I wanted to spread people around the world. This is quilt number 22. one summer, a woman, Catherine, her name is Catherine, who teaches at the Snowy Ridge Academy in Laramie, Wyoming, was vacationing in Maine and in a quilt shop that I still don't know anybody at the quilt shop, but they had heard about it and they put a sign up, and she read about it, contacted me and said, is it okay if my students participate? As a former teacher, I said, if you were here, I'd kiss you on the face. So she read age-appropriate books about the Holocaust to her 7th and 8th graders, and they made these blocks as she read. They stitched the blocks. And so she finished the book, and she thought, well, now we're finished. And so she laid all the blocks out. She, of course, is a quilter. She laid them out, and she let them stand in chairs so they could see how it would look. And they said, we're not finished. Find another book. So she read another book. This is the largest quilt we have by far. It is huge, and it's stitched entirely by 7th and 8th graders. Well, I mean, the teacher quilted it, but the blocks are all from 7th and 8th grade hands. This quilt, number 29, is from France. Métis Finling, again, Southern and English is all. Métis had a friend who was a midwife in the 1940s in France. And the friend had died, and Métis was cleaning out the friend's attic, and she found a sack full of baby clothes. And she went, baby clothes, 1940, midwives, France. So she pulled out all the reds and the whites, and she laundered them, and that's what this quilt is made of. All baby clothes from 1940s. We had our first European exhibit in June of 2017 in a 14th century temple in La Cause, France. I fell in love with that place, that village, and I tried my best to buy a house. I got the mayor down $36,000 that one afternoon, but the engineer still wasn't having it, said it needed too much work. It was a lovely, lovely, lovely way to have the first big exhibit. And when we got there, this man came up to me with a big, fancy camera around his neck, and he said, I am your official photographer. And I'm not used to that. So I said, oh, good. Well, I get copies. And he said, of course. And he said, this is a big day for me. It's a big, important day for me. And I said, why? And he said, my father was an SS officer. He served in France. He was captured and held prisoner in France. He married a woman from France. He never went home, and he never told us anything else about his term, what he did in the war. So this is big. The mayor, at the end of the day, came to me and he said, this is the second time America has saved us. The first time, you gave us food. You dropped food out of airplanes. And then today, this is important. And they have put a shield on the little chapel for the 70273 project. So I didn't know what a shield was, but I do now. This was the International Quilt Festival in Houston, Texas in November of 2017. They started out telling me that they wanted maybe 20 quilts. They wound up hanging 50 once they saw them, and it was a beautiful exhibit, and we went through an average of about 5 big boxes of tissues every day. And the stories, oh my goodness. Now this January of 2018, Holocaust Memorial Day is at the end of January in Europe, and it is a big thing that they don't forget. And they had asked us a year before, the Dean of Rochester Cathedral had contacted me actually at the end of 2016. And he said, I want you to fill this cathedral with these quilts. And I said, okay, I have 3, so it can't be next January. So in January of 2018, we filled Rochester Cathedral with these quilts. They hung from these magnificent arches, and these 2 banners, I don't know if you can tell from this picture just how huge these banners are. They were hanging at the front of the cathedral, and the pairs of red X's are covered with smaller pairs of red X's. There are 2,400 people commemorated on these 2 banners, every one of them made by people with vision impairments. Most of them blind. There was a woman there, Brenda, 98 years old. She had a big bowl. She had done something because she couldn't see to stitch. She had made them with just yarn, just looping around. She had a system that she would live. So she was there the night of the opening, and with her big bow and just giving those out. It was amazing. That same, in January, we went to Rochester Cathedral, which is near London. Durham Cathedral had also asked us to fill them, and so we went to Durham Cathedral, which is, I think, the north. I was out the day they taught geography. And then we hopped a little plane and went over to the Channel Islands, UK. And in the Channel Islands, every parish made at least one quilt. And television reporters, I'm still friends with a lot of them. Television reporters were not exempt, radio people, newspaper, magazines, everybody made blogs and took pictures. And like I said, I'm still friends in here from some of the TV and radio and print people. So these are some of the quilts. These were hung in the Jersey Heritage Center. Channel Islands, Jersey Channel Islands, was the last spot of land that the Germans left. So when we were over there, we walked in some German, I don't know, I don't do war talk, but they were built into the side of mountains and bunkers. Thank you. And we walked into them, and it was a powerful feeling that's a different kind of powerful than being in the presence of these quilts. And you could see where they had written things on the walls, and they're still there. The cannons are still there. It's a constant reminder of the people who live there. But now it's got green grass over them and flowers over them. And Kim Monitz, one of my 2 ambassadors from Channel Islands, took each quilt's picture in the parish landscape. This one is from St. Blades, I believe. Yes. St. Blades. That's Steve Monitz, her husband, behind it, holding it up. I told him I would always give him credit because he kind of whined about how much trouble it was. Now, last May, 2018, we were a special exhibit at a big event in Utah. And the engineer and I stayed the whole time because this is a story that you can't really just read it on a sign and get a sense of it. It's a story that really needs to be told. And what's happened, the most amazing thing that's happened without any scripting at all, without any strategizing. The engineer goes up and talks to people and tells them, would you like to hear more about it? And they mostly say yes. And he tells them about it. They wander through, hands over mouths, sopping up the tears, and then they come to me and tell me their story, which is just so amazing. It's such an honor. I love bearing witness to their stories. One day we were just too hungry to stay without lunch, and I hadn't brought our banana. And so we walked over to the other side of the exhibit hall to get something to eat, and when we got back, this woman had left a note in our journal that we leave out, and she said, today, May the 4th, is Memorial Day in Holland, where I'm from, and I can't believe I'm seeing this because I'm so homesick. Because on Memorial Day, all of the children and all the teenagers and all of the adults go and tend the cemeteries. They pull the weeds, they freshen, they sweep all of the cemeteries. May the 5th is Liberation Day, when then they celebrate. But on May 4th, they remember. And they have veterans come and talk to the children and tell the stories. If the veterans aren't there, other people tell the stories. So this is Yvonne. I didn't know how to find her. She just left that note in the book, and I went, oh. And so then I thought, everything happens the way it's supposed to. And sure enough, she swung back around. And for you quilters, she won Judge's Award for her Dear Jane quilt in the same show. I didn't show you that picture, although I have a picture of me and her in front of it. Because so this is Yvonne in the Netherlands, and she brought the Netherlands to the table in a strong way, and that was how she found out about the project. Now, see that little quilt hanging over her right shoulder? That one? This is it in person. This is this little dress. I made this one, and this little dress I was at a thrift shop in Georgia, and I was going out the back door because it was raining and my hair, and so they were throwing this dress away, and I swear to y'all, the dress went, psst, I'm one of your people, and so I grabbed it and I said to the volunteer, can I have this? And she said, yeah, it's got a stain on it. I love the stains. That's where the story is. And so I took this home and I said to the dress, what am I going to do with you, Shug? Because you're just too precious to cut up. And the dress said, you know, Jeanne, you're the founder of the project. You can do whatever you want to with me. And I thought, you're all right. And so this is what my hands wanted to do with her. And there were 1,248 people commemorated on this quilt. That's how many pairs of red X's there are on this quilt. And there's a little thread hanging down here with a button on it. And in Utah, at the show, a woman came up to me and said, I saw that little dress and it's just precious. And she said, but there's a string hanging down. If I'd had my scissors, I would have clipped it off for you. And I said, oh, well, thank you, but no need, because that's there because I wanted it there. My hands wanted it there. And this dress was also with me at the AHEAD conference. AHEAD is Association on Higher Education and Disabilities. And last July in Albuquerque, we were a special exhibit there. And I had this dress, and a woman came up to me with tears. And for the first time in 35 years, she said the name of her daughter. So, pretty amazing stuff happens when you do good things. Also at Utah, remember the International Quilt Festival? So, the first night, these two women came through, and one of them was just blubbering. I mean, she said, I just don't know why this is affecting me so. And I said, because you're a good human. That's why it affects you so. And she said, yeah, but it's beyond that. I just don't know. And then she said, would you come to Utah? And I said, I hesitated just long enough. And then she said, we'll pay the shipping. I said, yeah, we'll be there. And so we go there, and just when we're packing up the quilts to go, you know, to ship them out there, I get this other vision, and I pay attention to my big, fat, crazy visions and ideas now. And so this vision flashed, and it kind of made me cry a little bit, and I thought, okay, well, I don't understand, but you're going to tell me a story soon enough. I know how this goes. And so I just sat with it. Well, don't you know that afternoon, I got an email from Jeanne, the blubbering mess. I don't know why this affects me so. And she said, my granddaughter was just born today, and she has Down syndrome. So, that's what this quilt is. It is dedicated to her daughter, baby Rue, and all the joys she'll bring people and who need to remember that if it were 1940, what they would have missed. Oh my goodness, what they would have missed. So, amazing things. These are quilts hanging in Celle, Germany. Now, there were 3 exhibits in Dachau. There were exhibits all over Germany. This is mostly last year. They came on board with the project in the mid to late 2017, but it takes a while to gather blocks and get quilts made. So lots of exhibits happened last year in Germany. And then the big one was in Celle. And so engineer and I are going over there. And I said to him, I'm a little nervous because I don't know how you tell the Germans about their own history. And then it dawned on me, wait, I don't speak German. I don't have to do anything but point. And most of them speak English, so it all worked out. Over there, these quilts, the four to the left were made all by people with disabilities who live in institutions in Germany. The one over on the far right is a kindergarten teacher, had her class made those, and her class is mainstream. So she has people with disabilities and normal people too. And so they made that quilt. These were hanging in the exhibit, and I also, where I get stories like Gina's granddaughter, Karen telling me the name of her daughter for the first time in 35 years. Well, I get stories like that all the time. In Germany, the stories were, they would take me by the hand, lead me over to a quilt, point to a particular block, and say, I made this in honor of my uncle, who was 5 years old in 1940, and he had one leg longer than the other. And his family got a letter from some organization in Germany and said, we can take better care of him if you'll let him come live with us at this place. And so they did, because what parent doesn't want the best care for their child? And the next weekend, after they sent him away, the family all loaded up and they went to the place that they had dropped him off, and there was nobody there. And so they've researched and found that he was one of the people we commemorate. And I met him, so I got those kind of stories. Not quite primary source, but pretty darn close. And then there was another woman over there who had done her research Anna something like that. And I know the Anna's right. She had done research, and she has a relative who is documented, one of the people we commemorate. And so those stories were just a whole nother level. This is the AHEAD conference, where we were dealing with people who work in university and college campus. They're disability service offices. They call it different things, but that's basically what it is, the disability services. They had never heard of this. They had never done anything like this, because we were in an exhibit hall where the vendors are all selling their wares, and they had some really interesting products. They gave us 2 booths, and we spilled out. You can see going on down the hall, we took over 5 on this one side, and then across the way 2 more that nobody occupied. They just kept making blocks, and they got into this, and so it opened up a whole new, I don't think you even knew about that, did you, Amber? You didn't know about it, because we talked before that. But it opened up this whole new venue. So now I take the project to college campuses and tell them the story, tell history classes, tell art students, and just, we have block drives, and it's just been an amazing thing. And then, here we are. Here. That's this morning. So you've got to go see the exhibit at 1 o'clock. And I'm so grateful to you, Amber, for thinking about this and then staying with it and making it happen, because we first talked over a year ago. This has been a long time in the planning. And to the department heads and the provost and the president of the college, thank you all so much for being here. And some of you, I know, have made blocks or quilts for the project. So would you stand? Come on, don't be embarrassed to be part of this. Came. And so by show of hands, how many of you are now going to become part of the project and make a block? Hey, good. Well, there's all kinds of information. And what I do when I go to college campuses, we make the blocks, and then I take them home and find volunteer piecers and quilters to turn it into a quilt from that campus. And so it will be on exhibit. Sometimes it goes around the world, and then you can request it, so it will be on an extended exhibit on the campus, but it bears the name of the college and all of the people who had a hand in it, making it. Just so you know, Florida Atlantic, we had enough for 2 quilts. So maybe I'll outdo them, and we'll have just a whole exhibit of University of Central Missouri quilts. That would be great. Okay, now let's take any questions and answers. Okay, you can give me an answer if you want. Anybody have any questions about anything? The quilting, the history, the maintaining and sustaining the project, leading the project, managing the project. It touches a lot of different areas, this project does. Come on. Oh, Patty.
Am I supposed to use the microphone?
Yeah, well,
Oh.
Amber's got you covered. She is so awful.
Oh. You talked about a relative of a victim saying that I made this block in honor of memory of my uncle. Do they have logs of, or do they have the names of the people? Or is that completely lost and destroyed? And
It's both. There are some, and they're still discovering some of that. It's my understanding. I would love to go over there and do some of that research myself, but the language thing's probably going to hinder me. But they sometimes they did destroy a lot of the records, for obvious reasons, and they falsified some of the records, especially with causes of death. The bookkeeper, who was the one that kept all the tallies, the bookkeeper came up with a list of acceptable reasons, causes of death, and would just dole one out on a death certificate. They would send the death certificates to the families, and there would just be a cause of death. He kind of made a little oops, because he did them in alphabetical order, and he sent them out in alphabetical order, and so sometimes there would be a male who died of something that was only female oriented, or another problem that was obviously couldn't have been this person's issue that took them out. So there are some records that are still being discovered. Somebody else.
Yeah, I do. one of the reasons I do a lot of work with memorials, and one of the reasons I really like this project is that often when you see a memorial, you can just kind of see it and walk away. And this one's really sort of organic, and it involves people, and I think it does a really great job. So thank you for that. But one of the things, my question is, has it expanded? So because it has such an active element in terms of memorials, has it expanded? Because when I think of this, the Action T4, it was inspired by eugenics before, and then, so I mean, it hit me like, well, has something happened like with Tuskegee, or has it inspired other sort of projects that have gone beyond what happened in the Holocaust? And I was just curious if you've had an experience or heard anything about that.
I have not. I have not heard about that. We're going to enter a phase 2. We'll keep making blogs because
you should. I mean, I think it's
we should. I know there are a lot of other incidences that we have some things that happen here in the States that would be nice if we could commemorate them. I have not heard specifically of that in this project, and this is, y'all haven't heard this, and so I'm not on Facebook just yet, but what we're moving into now is we're going to celebrate people with disabilities who live among us today. So I have a special call out for quilt that will be going out in the next 2 weeks for quilts of a certain size that will introduce us to a person that you taught or you're related to or you're friends with who would have been one of the people we commemorate, but now we want you to introduce us to them and tell them why this person is special and what we would have missed if they had lived back then. So it doesn't really answer your question.
It does. And so, thanks.
Oh, and also on that series that I'm gonna release in the next 2 weeks called Tribute Quilts, and then there's also gonna be a sister component that's called Salute, and those quilts will honor people who take care of and who champion, like the bishop. These people that we'll put in the tributes and salutes can be real people, they can be historical people, they can be, that part doesn't matter, but like the bishop and the salute, that would be a good quilt to salute the one who brought Action T4 to a public cult. So that's where that's what we're doing next with this. It's a really good question, thank you. I wish I had a better answer.
Hi, I would first, right here.
Okay.
I would first like to echo, I guess, what everyone's been saying. This is a fantastic and really important project, and I think it does a really good job
Thank you.
of calling attention to other groups that I think are sometimes overlooked when we talk about the Holocaust. I mean, obviously, for good reason, we commemorate Jewish victims at the epicenter of it, but as I try to tell my students, I'm teaching a Holocaust class right here at this semester. Yes. It was a larger project by the Nazis to remake essentially the demographic map of Europe, which included Jews, which included Roma and Sinti, which included the handicap, which included Jehovah's Witnesses and gay men and women and lots of other groups. And so it's important to have this expansive understanding, and I really appreciate the way that this quilt brings that to life. My question is, I think the project that you're working on shows the power of the internet to bring us, bring people together and to be able to collaborate with so many people from different countries and share stories, but the internet can also be a cesspool, as we all know, and one of the negative features of that, I think, has brought Holocaust denialism kind of more into the mainstream in recent years. My question is, what role do you think that a project like this can play in combating those lies and attempts to minimize the horrors and the tragedies of these time periods? What value do you think that your project contributes to counteracting these ideas that need to be counteracted?
Great question. Thank you for that. It's going to take a bigger answer than I can probably articulate right now. I think the hands-on, the grassroots nature of this works in a good way. It's a positive. I think the people, like you said, the people are actively involved in this. When I'm on college campuses doing lectures and stuff, they're stitching blocks as I'm talking. So they're involved. And I think this may sound a little woo, and that's okay, because it's proven to be true in this project. The preponderance of goodness is what I would call it. And that's a grassroots thing too. I think we can counter, at least to a big extent, the negativity and the cesspool, as you said, of social media. I also am developing programs about how to talk to people who are different. That can be disabilities, that can be politically, that can be culturally, that can be geographically. But I'm really excited about that because it can be done. It can be done. And that will be a grassroots thing too, to be able to sit with somebody and how do you do this? It's real simple, but we've gotten away from it, and social media has helped take us away from it. So that's the best answer I have, is that I think the woo part is the intent of the people who are involved in this project. There's good intent, and the spirit shines through, which is why I cry every time I see them. They lived in my little Matchbox studio, but the spirit comes through in the quilting, what the piecers, the block makers, the quilters stitch into it. So it's not a very scientific answer, but that's for my husband. I'm the artist, so that's my answer. Thank you so much. I hope you'll stick around a minute, because I want to talk to you about
I'd be
something.
happy to.
Anybody else?
I'd like to know how these ladies found out about it.
That's a good question, too.
Hang on a second. I'll bring the mic.
Y'all can be thinking about what you're going to say.
I'm a CNA and I work with a lot of young people. I'm curious if you've thought about talking to any of the CNAs or medical groups, because it does seem really empowering especially for me, because we work with a lot of young people that people disregard as being useless feeders. I mean, even still today. So I wonder if you thought about talking to any of those companies or groups.
I have, and here's how I do everything in the project. Because I'm one woman, I'm gonna get some interns, but that doesn't happen until this afternoon. So I am one woman trying to do this you can just use your imagination, 142 countries, and pulling quilts for exhibits and checking blocks in. I'm gonna take just a little detour. When the blocks come into me, they all get checked in. They go into a landscape-oriented table. I cannot say the word spreadsheet to save my life. It just makes me want to curl up in a dark room in a little tiny ball. That is for the engineer, that is not for me. But they're all going there, so there will be, at the end of this project, there will be an online searchable database. So you'll be able to look, find your name, unless you choose to remain anonymous, and that's okay, we don't judge. Although I do kind of wonder sometimes why people don't want their name associated with the project. But that's on a low day, so I don't have many of those. So then I opened up an e-box and I got 300 good emails, so that's okay. But you'll be able to find your name, find which quilts your blocks are in, and then where in the world those quilts are on any given day. So you'll be able to find out where you are on any given day. So the way, now back to the answer, which is currently in progress. The way I handle things like that is I think I would love to talk to medical professionals about this. And then I just have to borrow from Quakers and say, way will open. So here you are. Here you are, way will open. That's how so much of this has happened. I know what I want to do, but I know I only have 24 hours a day. And Nancy, she requires some of that 24 hours. And so way will open, and it always does. It always has. So if you have time, could you stay and let's talk for a few minutes? And I also have cards up here that any of you who have to go, that has everywhere you can keep up with the project in social media. It's got an email address, it doesn't have a cell phone number. But I can give you that if you really want it. Just be aware of time zones. Remember, people, time zones. Last year, we were home only 4 weeks, and they were not 4 consecutive weeks. We were traveling for the project, and I used WhatsApp to talk to Europe, and they forget about time zones. And so I'm there sleeping. I keep it open because family emergencies happen, but really, France, this could have waited. Anyway, okay, thank you for asking that, and thank you for staying around a few minutes and let's talk about it. I think it's important. I have a brother-in-law who's a doctor, and he can't even read about this. It's too upsetting to him, and we need to get it, and we need to talk. Okay, question about how they found out about the project? Who? Okay, Danielle, field bus driver. I'd like to know that too.
Well, it was from Lori East.
Yes.
And Lori says, tell you hello, because she
Oh,
didn't
good.
come today.
I was hoping she could go.
Lori introduced me to the project, and I am a UCM educated, retired special ed teacher, and it was right up my alley. And
Look, stand up, Shug, so they can all hear you, okay?
there you go. This wasn't what I came for today.
That's all right. You don't have to do this. Hold on. Make yourself comfortable.
I taught middle school, so if you slouch and kind of have an attitude, I'll feel really at home. Anyway, we set up a sew day. I'm really good at twisting people's arms.
She
and
is.
I've got part of my girls here. I've got another friend, Ginger, who's a nurse. And Ginger came. We had a Saturday, and we could only rent get the facility for a morning. So we were in and out, and we made about 500 blocks that morning. Got Sherry and Veronica, Becky back there, Becky with her granddaughters Avery and Cassia. I was saying wrong. But Ginger coordinated our children. They probably went through 150 blocks, and they got bolder and bolder as they went. Lori East was there. She was piecing those blocks into tops as fast as we could make them. Not quite as fast. We were faster. And I emailed people. I posted it on every social media page and just said, come, come, come. Everybody, you don't have to sew. You just have to be able to draw or participate. And I don't know, does that answer your question?
And so you found out about it through Lori East,
East.
who found out about it in social media.
Who found out, yes.
And y'all found out about it through Danielle.
Yeah. And it just grew. And
viral.
then I pieced one of your quilts, and
Yes.
Miss Becky
And
back
Becky
here is a
quilted
long
it.
arm, and I said, hey, Becky. I twisted her arm some more. Not only did she come and help, but she quilted one of them.
And this
been
is the
great.
way it's gone. It's just, way opens every time. It just,
Yeah, Thanksgiving,
People step up.
everybody had rectangular white blocks and red pens, and my kids all went, I got the eye roll. But they did it, and my granddaughter, she pieced, or she would come, and the first thing before we'd ever sew, we need to make those red blocks, Gigi. She was only probably 5, and so she doesn't know the whole thing. She doesn't understand, but one day she'll understand what she participated in.
it'll unfold
Yeah.
as she grows older. We have one quilt that's called the Grand's Quilt. All of the blocks are made by grandparents and their grandchildren. We have a block, sibling blocks. Siblings get together and they make blocks, and so that's one special quilt. We have family blocks. Families get together and make the quilts. It's just, people are so good. Yes.
So I'm the team leader for the Army Honor Guard that's in the area. So we pull the flag at funerals for veterans, and we work with VFWs and American Legions quite a bit.
Thank you for doing that.
It's an honor. Have you ever worked with the VFW or American Legion with this project? Because I know a lot of them are quilters, and that they would love this.
Well, I haven't, but would love to.
Okay.
So can you help me with that?
I can. I'll talk
Okay,
about
good. So you're gonna stay around too?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I wonder how this,
Yeah.
she asked.
Okay, who else? Who else has a job for me? Y'all are fantastic.
I was kind of curious, were you surprised about the overwhelming amount of turnout that people have been able to supply for you? All these people are coming together and sewing and providing blocks and stuff. Are you just surprised about how many people are coming out and willing to help you with it?
That's a great question. And I have to say, no. I'm grateful and I'm honored on behalf of the people we commemorate. And yet, when that big, fat, crazy idea whooshed in and sat down, there were quilts as far as I could see, and they were all made by somebody besides me. Because I did take a minute to do the math, and there is no way I could have done this by myself. I did that much math. I didn't ask the engineer. So, I don't mean to sound unkind, because I am deeply, profoundly grateful. But because the idea showed me everything, I can't say I'm surprised. Plus, I am one of those Pollyannas who believes in the inherent goodness. I believe there are more good people out there than there are bad. We just hear about the bad ones on the news. So I'm validated and I'm grateful. Thank you for asking that.
I work at the local veterans home in Warrensburg, and I was just wondering if you're going to visit our local veterans. They'd love to see your daughter dressed.
you stay for a minute? And thank you for doing that work too. That's important work. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, what was like the greatest obstacle that you overcame while basically producing this project?
Would you stand up because I can't see?
Sorry.
Hey, there you are.
Hey.
I've got a vision problem too, so it's nice to see. I smile because the first thing that came to my mind, the biggest, tell me your question again, how did you word it? The biggest, I would call it a hiccup, but you said obstacle.
Yes.
Volunteers. Not Peasters, quilters, but volunteers who say they'll do bigger jobs. No, I don't mean bigger jobs, that's wrong. They will do other jobs, and they just, they have a life, and so time gets away from it. I want to picking that back up. But you know, if that's the only obstacle, it's pretty good, right? Because people are picking up, and this is a project of other people doing it. I'm just sort of the documentarian, which also, other breaking news, as of 2 nights ago, this is going to be a documentary. So if you're mind to, I would love if you would send me a 3-minute video, or I'm going to be setting up on the website where you can self-schedule and we can do a Zoom interview, and I want to know how you found out about the project, what if anything you've contributed. It can just be like 3 minutes if you want, but the important question that I want you to answer is, why does this matter? That would be the question I would ask every one of you out there, is why does it matter? Why does it matter that we spend our time, that we give any of our busy life to making this project happen, to commemorating these people? So if you would think about that, and you either call me and let's do a Zoom, or do it yourself, do a selfie and send it to me, that would be great.
Hi, you might have mentioned this, maybe I just missed it, but do you know the total number of people that you've commemorated so far?
Thank you for asking that. I did not mention that, except to say we've exceeded the goal. The last time I checked in blogs was in early February, and we were already at 72,000, and I would say now we're probably, just guessing, I haven't officially checked in the blogs, because that takes a long time, and I have to be there to do it, but I'm guessing we would be at about 76,500. That right there is a sign of kindness and goodness and compassion, folks, and people who don't want this to happen again. I was telling Greg and Michael before we got started that when I write on the blog, when I write a history post, the next morning I get a rash of unsubscribes because people don't want to hear that part. They want to hear this part. And this is important in its own way, but so is the history part, because we cannot let it happen again. And it didn't just happen overnight. It had been in the making for a decade or more, wouldn't you say? And this Hitler didn't just wake up wanting to do this. It was a long time coming. We need to know those signs and not ever forget those signs. We cannot let something like this happen again.
It didn't just happen in Germany either.
No, it might, and not just in Germany. I'm not segregating. I'm saying in the world. Anybody else have a question? Or you want to pay me any more compliments? That's okay too. I'll pass them on to the people who deserve them. Yes.